Also, feel free to put on your cameras. Huh? we don't
Yeah.
we don't mind seeing people's faces.
Yeah, we're talking to you.
Yeah.
Hi Snigdha, hi Amitabh, hi Reema, hi Manohar, hi Ronita.
Ronita is still connecting to audio. You might have to say that again.
Yeah.
Okay, precisely 2 more minutes and we will begin.
Okay.
Actually, I can start with introducing what this is and what we're trying to do with it. So welcome and thank you to all of you who've signed in. Also, I'm going to put it up on YouTube and we're going to post it on Facebook. So if you find this interesting, you can share it and let people know. So every Sunday we are doing Cosco-nnect, which is like a series of chats, talks, conversations with independent artists, essentially movement practitioners, theater practitioners, people who are intimately connected in some way with the movement arts and with contemporary dance, um, sort of more specifically, because the Citizens of Stage is a collective of independent movement artists, and we come together to try to make work, to keep up our practice, and to have some kind of an ecology going for the dance ecology, which has many gaps, let's just say. So the way we go forward is really by creating a strong community and hoping that um, yeah, that makes us feel on the one hand of the spectrum less lonely, a little bit more secure, keeps up our practice, and on the other hand inspires us to make good work by independent artists. um, so with that, I'm going to introduce Deepika, who is more or less Bangalore based, though she's traveling around a lot now. But she's Bangalore based theatre maker, an actor, a writer, a director, and more recently, a fairly avid movement practitioner. Deepika's work is work that I closely follow. She's a very good friend, but also, and more importantly, in this context, is somebody who I believe, and I think a lot of people in the contemporary space believe, is making path-breaking work, in the sense that her work is creating a shift in the way that work is made and in the way that we evaluate ourselves, and in the way that we feel is okay or not okay to put our voices out there. She is an independent artist, and why she's here so early in the Cosco-nnect series, this is the third talk that we're doing, and why she's here so early is because I really feel personally, and Maitri as well, that uh, Deepika is not just intimately connected to the contemporary dance scene, but I think also is shaping it in many ways, because of the way that her work. Sorry if I have interruptions. I'm admitting lots of people into the rooms, but yeah, into the room, because of the way that her work constantly engages with dancers and movers. And by engaging with just one or two dancers or movers, she kind of already shapes the scene that we work in and work around. So yeah, so this is really why I wanted her here so early in the series, as a voice in independent arts but also in contemporary dance. So welcome, Deepika.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Dia, for that very, very kind introduction. And hi everybody who's in the room, and hi to everyone who'll be watching this later. If you watch this later, it's really nice that you guys are doing this series. I really admire and appreciate the Citizens of Stage and everything that you guys have been doing in the last couple of years. Whether I saw you train at Shunya, or whether it is the work that you do in collaboration with other organizations. And I don't know if I'm shaping the contemporary dance scene. I would never, ever, like, I would never take that on. But I do enjoy, not just enjoy, now it's beyond enjoyment. It's a very, very, like, important part of uh, what I do and how I like to think about work. So yes, I'm very happy to be here, and we can dive right in.
Yes, okay, so we have an hour
One sec.
and we have a lot to talk
Yeah.
about. So like Deepika said, we're going to dive right in. So for everyone who's listening, please feel free to post questions in the chat and also comment. So if there's something you resonate with, or you want to know more about, just go ahead and use the chat to post your questions. and also feel free to let us see you. So if you want to open your cameras, and that's also, we'd love to
Yes,
see who we're talking to.
it that would be wonderful. We already know each other, many of us, so
Yeah.
it's not so it's not so formal that you have to turn your camera off. But anyway, your choice.
Your choice. Hello,
Hi.
this is Shumit Roy from Kolkata, Deepika. Uh,
Hi.
Yes, I think I've met you in one of the theater adults that QTP and NCPA
Ah,
do.
okay.
I mean, met you as in seen you as part of it.
I shall just correct my name to my theater name now.
okay.
Okay,
Got it.
you can mute yourself. Yeah.
Mine.
Good. So, Deepika, I'm going to start with our
Yes.
first question, which is a really simple one. For in case there are people who don't know your work, just tell us a little bit about your journey. And I'm asking you a sort of umbrella question: journey as an actor, as a director, and as a writer, and in the context of training, opportunities, mentors, support that you may or may not have received, some of the challenges. Yeah, however you'd like to play
Okay.
that. Yeah.
I'll try to keep everything as concise as possible so we're able to like cover as much as we. I started out actually as I started doing theater when I was in school, and then I continued to do it in college, like a lot of young people do. And I went on to study journalism because it was just really not an option for me to study theater. I didn't know if I liked it enough to do that, and also while my folks were very supportive of me studying the humanities, theater was still not something that they may have let me do when I was like 18 or 19.
Right.
And I anyway didn't think of it as a viable profession. And then I went on to work as a journalist at the Hindu, as well as at Time Out, which is like this magazine, this global magazine that had chapters in every city. And I was the theater editor at Time Out for a year and a half, I think. But in between, always doing theater, and I finally quit these two jobs like consecutively to finally just take the plunge into theater. I haven't formally trained in theater, and actually in 2018 I had the opportunity to go to this lab in New York called the City Laboratory. It's run by Anne Bogart and Tadashi Suzuki, and one of our contemporary theater makers, Akshay Gandhi, has actually been there, but I simply could not afford to live in New York City, even if I had been able to pay my tuition, which was actually very less compared to like big institutions like Columbia or one of these like really big universities. So my training, actually I take it very very seriously, simply because I don't have formal education, and I always seem to use this word as a disclaimer, which I also this phrase as a disclaimer, which I also find kind of odd, because it's not necessary that we have to have training as artists. It helps, but like dancers in theater, we don't there aren't that many theater makers that I know who have actually been to theater school.
Right.
It was a more in the last 10 years, it was something that became more prevalent, because there were opportunities to get Charles Wallace and Inlax and stuff like that. Yeah, and so my training is something I try to do as part of I think training is just to to, to be in practice, to make work, small, big, however, whatever. I like to do that. I try and train in some form of physical practice, physical conditioning practice on a regular basis. It's difficult sometimes with our schedules of travel and shows. It is difficult, but I really enjoy it. And I really try to make sure that I get it in when I could. The pandemic, in that sense, was kind of weirdly put us all in one space for a very long time. So we, and all the, like you guys, the citizens ran so many classes,
Yeah.
whether it was yoga, contemporary dance, culinary, whatever. So there was that. And I continue to do that. I also just trained as a yoga teachers in a yoga teachers training program, which also I find really useful. And my other stuff to do with acting, to do with like the more theater part of this, although I don't see it very differently, honestly. I think if you train in dance, if you train in any kind of, like I've done Gaga, I've done like small bits. I've gone and studied Kudiyatam for 2-3 weeks.
Mm.
Again, nothing like long term. I haven't been like dancing like ballet dancers since I was 5, or like Bharatanatyam dancers since your particular age, but I just try to take whatever is available to me. And Bangalore has been that city. It's offered us a lot. And I think, Dia, you've been a huge catalyst in creating training spaces along with Shunya, along with your other peers and colleagues, some of them who are here. I think we need to.
Ask.
I think that's your. I think that's your mom, Anisa. We muted her. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, you guys have been a huge and I think that's also where our kind of work and life started to merge, because we really spent time together in the studio together, right? And that's how we became more familiar with each other's work.
Right.
And yeah, I still try to like find, and I remember in 2020 the City Lab, which I didn't go to, was offering their viewpoints in Suzuki training online, and I finally met the people who I may have worked with, and we just had such a deep and profound connection through the work, and we write to each other still, and one day hopefully
Right.
we will do something together. Yeah. I hope I haven't rambled on. Please cut
No, it's
me
great.
off.
So actually, from what you said, I have like 2 or 3 offshoot questions. So I'm going to ask you 2 of them, and then you can, maybe they're connected. So one is, you said this thing about you don't really need to have been trained or to have trained in a certain way to be an artist. And then you of course made that distinction that for dancers there are slightly different sort of prerequisites, right? And even that I would question, because I think things have changed even in the dance space. But because of what you said around in a sense learning on the job, learning through say residencies or through collaborations or internships, and also through other jobs. For example, I know from your work that so much of the way you create work comes from the fact that you've been a journalist, right? And that you've written in a different way, or you've had to write in a different way from the creative, sometimes like this magical realist space that you kind of write from. So that's my question to you in that space, which is that what then is devised work? Because I know that one of the things that devised work does allow is that you can go far beyond form, and you can work, you could work with someone who's a completely different profession than a performer and create a performance around that. So what then is devised work, Deepika, for you? And the second question to speak to that is this thing. I mean, you talked about journalists, and actually a few days ago I was attending something around freedom of journalists in this situation that we're in now. And I thought about you, because I remembered that I thought, oh, you could have been one of the journalists who is, well, a little bit afraid right now, but you have chosen to be an artist. And so I want to know for you, where is that distinction? Is there a distinction between being an artist and being an activist? Yeah.
Okay.
What are the,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just two. Can you hear me?
yes.
Yes. Okay. Just two things. I don't think it's just to sort of qualify what I said. I don't think you don't need training to be in the theater. I think if you
No,
can
no, of
get it,
course.
it's great. It's just that my circumstances didn't allow it for a while. There were 2 times that I could have gone to places that I wanted to go. I just couldn't raise the financial support. But and not having that, I think, kind of pushed me to do other things, which has always been like very 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 owned by me. That's like charted, that path has been charted by me. So I'll just, yeah. So two things. What is device theater? It's such a broad term. It's like actually we're really making something out of thin air. You don't have the playwright and the author is not at the center of the process, as it is in some in a lot of even American theater. The
Right.
playwright is at the heart of the theater.
Right.
In countries in Europe, the dramaturg, the director's vision is at the heart of of the play, and then the playwright kind of like works with that. Um, or even the playwright can be at the center. Like in Germany is also, there's so many text heavy kind of performances also that we know. But what I'm trying to say is that devised in that sense is where the playwright does not have prominence only. They could, but mm, they don't necessarily. And we really create from what is in the room. You
Mm.
come with something, or maybe you come with nothing, and you use you use the actor, the performer, their bodies in space to create something. I know that sounds rather generic. I like to think of it as form that is shaped and driven by content, I guess.
Mm.
So there is no form. We find form to support the thing that we want to say. And if we don't want to say anything, that's also okay. But I don't know. It's like looking for clues in an empty room. It
Right.
is really that. It's looking for like something in an empty room. I used to think that my work is super like I think of I'm a journalist somewhere still in whatever, but I don't know if I can claim to do that. I didn't work as a journalist for very long, yes, but I was trained as one. I was
Mm.
trained to look at the city in that way. And I think looking at Bangalore in that particular way,
Mm.
of knowing a little bit about its history, the way that it's laid out, finding low-lying areas that would get like flooded during the rain and covering like flyovers. And I was put on the municipal beat as a young reporter. So I used to do things that I wasn't necessarily comfortable with. So that thing about the city kind of, I don't know now if this is something I'm just saying because I did work as a journalist or whatever, but I do think there's something about looking outside of how you experience a city, right? So you get into your Uber or your auto or your bus or your car or your bike, and then you go somewhere and then you do something and then you meet some friends, maybe, I don't know, and then you come back, and that's largely the life that you inhabit in a city. But then when you're a journalist, you see and uncover parts of it that really you would not otherwise. So a little bit of that, I guess. But I think I would really still, I think I'm a writer, so I think a lot of my work stems from like how to find structure for writing, or images, um, evocations,
Mm.
those kinds of things. So I don't know. I can't really be sure. It's also been a very long time. It was 10 years ago that I worked
Mm.
as a reporter for a daily newspaper. So I don't know if it still seeps into my work. I don't think I think as a journalist.
Mm. Right. Okay. So, okay, and I mean, so actually, how does Deepika, the writer, the
Hmm.
performer, the the performance maker, and also right now the sort of fairly enthusiastic and rigorous movement practitioner, how do these make space for each other, and how do they influence each other? um, yeah, are they inseparable, or do you have to sometimes say no, now you stay away from my day so I can focus on this? Is the writer's brain helped by the movers practice? Is the performance maker's brain, I'm assuming, of course, is influenced by the performer's experience? So how do these different in a sense Deepika's yeah, create your
Meet
work?
and talk. Yeah. Thank you. That's actually a very nice and very very meaningful question, because I don't know if I really don't know if I see myself as a writer in the traditional sense, like, because I kind of only write for the stage now, even though I am trying to write like non-fiction, a book of essays, like very personal and stuff like that. It's a long process. But I do think of a writer for this. I think of myself as a writer for the stage. I've been a playwright for the last 7 or 8 years, really trying to like develop that craft. So I feel these are inseparable in some ways, because also some of my work has been solo, and so all these live in this weird continuum. The struggle for time is real because we only have that many limbs and that much energy to uh, to dispense. So currently, where I am, I'm teaching drama in my friend's theater space in Dubai, and I'm feel because it's a floor and because we were in a pandemic year, the urge is to move. The urge is to move and to, like, really use the flow, be around people, teach like drama to complete beginners, whatever that means to them, right? And the writer in me is like, when are we gonna start writing the next piece of work? Because it is also fact that because I have produced certain pieces of work and they've found certain places to rest in, or like, if I'm gonna um, look for someone to publish them, or some it's being translated into some other language to possibly be produced, then it also makes sense to have that trajectory on, and that assembly production on like it has to be moving. So I do time is the struggle for time is real, but it's also what keeps it alive and fun, and constantly you're jostling with yourself. All of these parts, now I've stopped thinking about, oh, how will this directly affect this part of my theater practice, oh, how it I just do, because I don't think about it. I know it does, because I know, yes, like last evening we started a drama workshop, and I was uh, it was like a performance, because when I ended the 2 hours I was drained and exhausted, and I realized it's that post performance feeling where you've really held yourself through the entire day, and then you kind of, it's like this explosion of 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 body breath energy that keeps you in this kind of so then I realized, I mean, you just know that this work, it's like you're a receptacle, and you just fill it with as much water or whatever like whatever coffee as you
Yeah,
can, like
yeah,
you
yeah.
just yeah.
With the moment, in a sense, whatever it is in time that you're working with, I guess. So we've got this question that came in, um,
Yes.
which is, why do you so often work with movement artists, and in a devised work context, and how are you using movement as a tool of creation? This question has come for you.
um so again, like uh it was a very city ecology that led me towards dancers,
Right.
because we have articulry where all the contemporary dancers in Bangalore have somehow passed through this place. In
Absolutely.
fact, at some point, I remember I was, while I was working at the Hindu, and I actually went to cover it, like as a school. I remember thinking that maybe this is something I could I could try out. It would mean a year's commitment, and I think until like I was even 7 8 years ago, 6 years ago, I was still like wondering if I should do that. So it came as it was very much part of the city arts ecology, and I also worked at their biennale. So I was always meeting dancers and watching their process, and so it was quite interesting to me. And also we were watching a lot of work that came uh, at that time. I wasn't traveling. I had never been anywhere else except within the country, but there were lots of performances that came as part of the biennale, or even to Rangashankara and things like that, where you saw that actually, oh, this performance from, I don't know, Switzerland, it's like they're not really using words, but this is a kind of theater. I'm moved, I feel something. And these are the early days of watching performance, when we didn't have the language to understand what we felt, but we were like, hey, so I don't really have to stand in this living room set and talk like Rashmi, ye kya like we don't have to do all that. Like we don't have to do this. We don't have to be like, oh, Barasa, I don't think. Like we didn't have to speak like this. We didn't have. So that was that early realization, where this then you start finding the language for it, about what performance is and what theater is and what is Eurocentrism and how, like all of this, right? So then I think it was through this community of constantly meeting dancers in their performances and having perhaps this cross pollination, and also knowing people who were starting to work a bit with dancers, that I think the first one of the first movers I worked with was you, when we wanted to make hair. A brief history of your hair was um, a project supported by Lashwa Studio and funded by the India Foundation for the Arts, and also the New Voices Arts project, which was a thing that Indian Ensemble used to give out. And I remember when we worked on that project, on that production, it was really about some sort of evocative qualities, because there was no real story, there was no real, it was just vignettes, montages. It was about mood and atmosphere and what the mandolin did to, like the live musician. So I also work a lot with music and live music, and uh, we barely ever, I've never really used that much recorded music in my work, like um, so that started to happen. And I think what I really admire, love, appreciate, and find the dancer's way of being and functioning in the world as something that I personally aspire to, even though my language is different. I feel like it's like an anchor in my practice to know that there is a dancer somewhere that who is training like 14 hours a day or 10 hours a day or whatever. And I think that keeps me even if I don't do it myself, it gives me a sense of reference in
Right.
this rather like nebulous world of being a performer, and then engaging with them in the space. Dancers also teach uh, a lot. They teach that their practice is also very much nourished by their teaching. So that's something that I've attended classes by all of you, and like, we've talked a lot, and there's spaces that allowed for that. So slowly it started to feel like, hey, I think we have something in common. I think we have something that, and I was never really interested in the kind of theater mm, that didn't respect the body and didn't respect space, and only, like, again, gave only importance to authorship and words. So yeah, I think that's how I guess these are also long things to
Yeah,
condense in a very quick
these are
manner.
very
So
good.
if I'm,
Yeah.
yeah, so they're long journeys, and they're also long ideas, like big ideas, in the sense of like how you see it actually materialize, and what that timeline was, and how one actually went about doing it. But
Absolutely.
I know that, like, for example, I know Ronita was here, and we made a piece of work called I'm Not Here, and was called an 8-step guide in how to censor women's writing. So we had Sharanya, who's from the theater, a theater maker and a theater performer, and Ron, who did not know each other at all, were very, very different, like, lenses into performance making, but they came together, and we found language. I think language interests me, not this spoken language, but language of the stage, music, and the way that it can really affect how we. She is here. She is
Thank
here.
you, Ron.
Hi, Rani. Yes, there she is. Yeah, so we found together. I also like the idea of devising with this kind of equal agency on the performers. We're really not like, we try. Also, then there was, it's a piece of work that speaks about women. It has a feminist angle to it. So also the way of working, me like the attempt has been to keep the way of working like that as well. So
Yeah.
to keep a feminist spirit within the work, and
Mm.
find, yeah, so it's a lot to condense, but I'm trying my best to,
Wonderful.
yeah,
Thank you.
say.
Yeah, because I feel like you're being able to touch on a lot of things. We've got a few comments and questions, so I'm going to just read. Shumit Roy from Kolkata has said, "Isn't learning by doing the best form of training?" And he says, "Well said, Deepika. Looking for clues or cues in an empty room, which is how you describe device theater." And Supraja, I'm going to come to your question in a moment, because I first have a question for Deepika from a lot of the contemporary dancers who are listening, and who will listen once we upload this. So so your work, especially the fact that you worked with movers, I think is very exciting and encouraging for dancers, in the sense that I think like you said, in Bangalore, the performance ecology is such that the bubbles have merged in mostly very exciting ways, mostly, I would say. And so, and the other angle of that is simply this, that because theater has an older infrastructure than contemporary dance, I won't now talk about classical dance again. Contemporary dance is still very new in India, and we are perhaps the first bunch of like independent contemporary dance artists. So we're really trying to figure it out. So I think there's something about being invited and included by the theater community that really gives us some sense of value, some sense of like validation for just our existence and what we do. Because in the capitalist framework, in the urban framework, our practice, this, like you said, 14 hours a day in a studio somewhere, is abstract and bizarre, and often doesn't have a place till we insist on it, so in the pandemic, for example, like you said, it's been really nice to have so many people coming into classes from all over the world, and appreciating those. Ron is having her own field day over here, but yeah, appreciating those classes. But so I wanted to ask you, just to kind of detract a little bit from you, because I think a lot of
Yes.
dancers look up to you. From you,
Yeah.
what would you say to a dancer who wants to work in the theater, who wants to be able to merge those worlds, who wants to train as an actor, for example? Like I for so long was looking for acting class. I was like, I also want to learn acting, but I really didn't find. There's a few workshops here and there that worked with voice and worked with presence in a certain way, but not acting in the way that, for example, you could take a dance class, right? So I just wonder, what would you say to dancers who are looking to enter that practice, include and learn from that practice, and to work with
Um,
directors like you?
well, I don't know if I don't know if I can actually dole out any like very good advice in that sense, because also the ecology, as merged that as it is, I also think it's also very fragmented. Like I know theater practitioners, especially like my generation, whatever, that's like 5 years plus minus, are trying to have choreographers in their rehearsal room, and are trying to but to train as an actor, I would be as curious. I know that we have drama school Mumbai and we have the National School of Drama, but acting workshops or drama workshops are not like they're not that common actually to be. Can you give me 1 second?
Yes. Shumit, I can. These classes didn't become performances on Zoom. So Shumit has asked, did these classes become performances on Zoom? They didn't become performances. They stayed classes. They still happen. So yeah, and they're open to mostly everyone.
So my
I'm
question is,
very
why
sorry.
not? Why didn't it become performances?
Right. I'll just come back to you with that one. I want Deepika to finish.
Right. Sure, sure.
Thank you for your question. Yes, Deep.
I'm so sorry. I'm in a new place and just trying to figure out the schedules of different people. So the vacuum cleaner was going off. But yeah, essentially, we were talking about what young practitioners can do. I think one thing that I feel has really helped is always to go watch performances. And now that theaters are slowly opening up, and maybe I don't know where we are in terms of the pandemic and like what is going to happen, but if you're able to watch, that's really where I felt like I met lots of people, even as a young actor. And also decided like, hey, I like that. Not I like that in a simplistic way, or but that there was something over there that really worked for me as an audience, and as somebody watching with a close eye.
Right.
So I would imagine that's one of the things to do. And I think kind of throwing oneself into different types of trainings that exist. I know, like Akshay does, the one who went to City Lab, he does viewpoints and Suzuki training regularly. I know that the Citizens of Stage invite like young contemporary theatre makers like Sujay Saple to also be part of their modules in performance making. So again, he works so much with dancers. In fact, he only works with with contemporary dance. Yeah. So this language kind of blurring and these things, I think we have to also find that space. And it's surprising that you say that, you know, like when theater uh, makers or practitioners invite you in this space, into a space, it feels it you feel valued, because I would imagine it's like the opposite, right? I feel um just yeah, I just feel like it's the opposite, but I can understand, because the contemporary dance is still new in that sense, in the way that, like, you know, only big cities, Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, have a sense of what that even means, um, and what it takes, and what is the training, and what is the work. So, and we only see this like as part of, again, you know, when performances come from, I don't know, from Germany, and from parts of Europe, from Korea and stuff like that. So we've never really seen. Now we've started to see our own choreographers kind of make work and take it to places and perform it for us. So it's like there's no advice as such, because I really don't. I think we're all trying to navigate this very fragmented ecology with the best we can, putting survival and livelihood aside. Sometimes, you know, once that is fulfilled, we're able to do the next thing, and then we're able to do the next, and then we're able to do the next. um, Again, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but you're on mute.
Sorry, there was a procession downstairs, so I muted it so it wouldn't disturb us. No, I'm saying that thank you for that, because, you know, even without a direct answer, the fact that you share like your own, like the sense of the fact that it's a fragmented ecology, and that you also have that experiential fact sort of to deal with, is very strangely sort of, it allows us, I think, all of us to think, okay, we have to look for solutions together, or not even solutions, but like potential paths forward. Yeah, so for one of the things, for example, Deepika, I've closely followed your pandemic experience, because we've personally talked a lot through it, but also because, you know, you brought out this flurry of absolutely fantastic, very ironic, very cheeky, very meaningful poetry during this time. So Shumit, I'm actually coming to your question with this reference. Shumit was asking, why didn't those classes become performances on Zoom? So the purpose of those classes, that, and he's talking about the dance classes that we were teaching, was really mostly for us to keep our teaching practice up, for us to be able to earn some money and pay rent, essentially. And as far as performance is concerned, we some of us did, like I was in a dance film performatively, and there were different kinds of things that were happening. But I'm not going to answer why we didn't go into live Zoom performances in a big way. We did do some, honestly speaking, but I think it took a long time for live performance makers. And a lot of Deepika's work is, though some, like her last piece, for example, I'm Not Here, was performed on a large stage, like in Rangashankara, for example. She did pull in the space, so it is immersive in a way, and it's getting increasingly intimate in a certain kind of way. And I think that intimacy for a lot of us might also be a political, as a tool, a political stance, that I will now speak to you, I will speak to just you, and, you know, to maybe 20 other people, sort of thing. And anyway, we don't make much money when we perform in India. In fact, for dancers, we lose money, to tell you the truth. So now to transfer that to Zoom is quite, uh, it yeah, it wasn't, I mean, we did some Zoom performances, and for the idea of trying something new, it was fun, and I know some people who had great success with it. I didn't. I went back to performing live as soon as I could, which was in November. and leading to what I would like Deepika to talk about, the fact that she also then, those wonderful poems that she came out with through the pandemic, which she would just post on Facebook and Instagram, and it wasn't like, it was just shared very openly and generously, but they spoke to everything that was going on through, those stages of things that we saw unfolding through the pandemic. And then she changed, I mean, not changed, but she used that to lead into a live
Theater performance.
on
Yeah.
Zoom. So Deepika, would you like to share a little bit about the performing making aspect on Zoom and what that was like?
Well, to be honest, I think I cheated a little because I went into a theater and the performance was about not being able to be in a theater with an audience and share a performance with the audience. So what you gave them was a sense of nostalgia, which is why I don't think it can work anymore because theaters are open. So I went into an empty theater and talked about the fact that we meet like this in this very dissonant way. Although it is wonderful to be able to do that, it is also very disorienting for artists. It's also, there's a sense of loss that like underlines this entire time. So uh that performance was, I think, like it, yeah, like I said, it's a little bit of a cheat because, well, in the sense that it wasn't built for Zoom. In that sense, like it used the theater space, and you saw the theater through Zoom, and the performance was about how we're not in this space together. So it had this particular, it had this particular tone, and it was able to reach somewhere, touch the audience in a very particular manner. And they all hung out later and we talked as if we were, that time when actors are sitting at the edge of their stage with their legs hanging off the stage and just talking to the audience in this very
Deepika,
casual manner.
you've discovered something which has become very popular internationally. It's called hybrid performances now. So, in fact, in the festival that we did in November of theatre from around the world, there were two productions which are hybrid productions. They were performed on stage, but anybody from anywhere in the world could be present. Okay, so the
Right.
little trick they
No,
had was,
I don't think, yeah, but I don't think I'm talking about that. It's actually not, I think perhaps it would be clear if I could present a trailer or something like that. Yeah. But it isn't a hybrid performance.
no, but just
It's
to share
just,
with you folks, what we found in for the Red Curtain, what we do good theatre for good causes. In 3 months, we were able to raise more money than we did in 3 years
Ah,
by going on Zoom.
thank you.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think I was a little wary of taking this into the new, like embracing this new world. And so this performance spoke of that insecurity and whatever.
Right.
So it was a form talking to form, like that kind of situation, which is why I think it felt somehow real and authentic, at least to me and to the few like people who talked to me about their feedback and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I never started out with the idea. I didn't want to perform the poems or anything. It was just a way of communicating from isolation. So
Yeah, I know that you went through some kind of a sort of deep transformation, in the sense that, and I asked this question earlier, but we didn't really get into it. But really, this thing of being an artist, being an activist, and also, I mean, just being a human. How are you responding to what is going on? And when I say responding, it's a very privileged word. Actually, you have the luxury to respond, as opposed to like, this has now happened to you, right? So yeah, we are very privileged. We are sitting in homes where we are still getting 3 meals a day, even though we are artists, etc. So I really want to understand, how are we, like, based on, and I'm really talking about personally, Deepika, so you can share as much as you like about what were the things that you felt, kind of like, what was your pandemic experience? I know that we know, those of us who follow your work, that it did something to your work. It shifted the things you say. Your language, which you're talking about, shifted not just in terms of the language, but the content had shifted, right? It felt like you dropped a few degrees deeper into something. I don't know into what. So yeah, if you could share something about that. And there is a question from Supraja, who says, does Deepika feel about what does Deepika feel about humanities and aesthetic scholarship or any kind really, and engaging with having a possible dialogue with the practice? I'm sorry, these are very
Yeah,
different. So you can answer.
no, I'll try to answer that. I don't know if I drop few degrees deeper. I don't know. I think I actually don't end up thinking a lot about, how I just end up doing it, like whatever feels right. And I know it sounds like such a basic answer, like I just do whatever. But really, I mean, literally, because you were forced into a corner. I think personally and professionally, one felt a sense of loss, but also a sense of pause, and that that very unique combination, that very unique crossroads led to something. And I never thought of the poems as work. It was just a way to really speak out of my sense of observation and loneliness. And then I guess in that, I think if we everyone that I know, whether it is an investment banker or whether it was like um, a fitness trainer, like something shifted during that last year. So as an artist, of course, we are all bound to feel, because we generally engage with ourselves on like a little more than surface level. At least that's the hope. So then you do feel like something has shifted and you are observing the world in a different way. And we were also looking back at our own practice constantly and saying, what does this mean? Like what does this mean to whatever? What does this mean that now some festival is saying we'll do your show as a video on demand, as opposed to actually a four-sided, like, what does that mean? That was one. And I think I just kept my head down and worked. I think I worked like a monk for the first 8 months, 6 8 months. I just trained with you guys on Zoom, read, wrote, cleaned. You did the things that you didn't really. And that's what I mean. It's a crisis as well as it's a pause, and that's a very unique like place to be in. So I felt like also it gave me a chance to value my own practice, because I didn't have practice, and that's the only way I learn. Like I didn't have a regular practice, and that's the only way I learn. So it also scared me a little bit. But then I think yeah, you're right. We're privileged, we're lucky. Somebody saw these poems on Zoom and thought that it could be a nice performance. So then I created
On
a
Facebook.
performance around that on Facebook. Yeah, this
Yeah.
Anmol Velani saw it. Like he's a well-known. He ran the Ford Foundation, which is now the India Foundation for the Arts. He was the executive director, right? So he saw these poems. He was a curator for a festival that he thought I should make the performance for. So I made the performance for this festival, and in that something emerged. It was also the hardest performance I had to make because I was so exhausted by the end of the year. Something about like producing was very difficult. I also wrote a play for Zoom that hopefully will be produced by some theater company in the US in April. It's a virtual, but again, it's two women having a conversation on Zoom. They haven't met each other for 15 years, and one of them they have a long friendship, and how so yeah, I know what you mean about deeper, but one doesn't necessarily see it like in that way. It's just time, it passes, it transforms you. So that kind of thing. I didn't understand what I don't remember the question that
It
Supraja
was
asked.
the question was, what does Deepika feel about humanities and aesthetics scholarships or any
Scholarship,
kind
huh?
really, and engaging with having a possible dialogue with practice?
What do I think of it? I think it's very important and necessary, and I wish I had a more academic bent of mind. If I wish I was more, I wish I was able to write critically,
Hmm.
in an academic manner in that sense. But I think but I think that the fact that and Supraja, I know because she comes for all shows, and she's just generally somebody who's constantly in her own way supporting my work for so long. I just see what I find really generous is like, at this, when you're making something, you have certain things that you get from it. I guess
Hmm.
you feel nice
Hmm.
that there was an audience that was applauding you at the end of the show, or somebody invited you to this kind of a talk and said you're important enough to discuss your work with us. But with with scholarship, I feel like they're engaging with the work constantly because there's a genuine curiosity, and I think that that curiosity is something I'm trying to develop. Um, and I mean, I wish we engage more in that sense, because that would be, I think that's crucial and necessary. We really need to document contemporary practice. We need to analyze it. We need to think about, like, we don't have a history of theater, real, like, contemporary performance, theater, dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, the last 50 years have not really been academically just not just documented, but also like written about in a critical way.
Yeah, I mean, I think also like in a way the academics and the performance world are feeding into each other so sort of consistently and dynamically at the moment. I know that there are a lot of academics who are in rehearsals with us sometimes, and you're having
Yeah,
also sometimes it's not just curiosity and collaboration. I think sometimes we're doing it because we have to see where are we on this page with the discourse around caste, class, gender, because all of this is getting it rightfully very very poignant, important, and but also there are like there is very you've got to really be thorough, right, as a performance maker in your investigation around large topics. And like we know, as small as the story may be, the topic that somehow the person is political, and whatever you're researching will be placed in some contemporary reality. And so that's why I guess academics really helps us, right, in terms of or knowing academics who also toe this line between the two worlds.
yeah, and I feel their engagement is truly very generous, because they are not, you know they they're able to see this as part of history, as part of lineage, as part of uh, like, they're able to do that. And
Hmm.
they're also curious about following one person's work for a long time, and
Hmm.
like
Hmm. Hmm.
being able to see the different trajectories that follows and things like that. And I feel as artists, we sometimes don't have the time or the luxury in the, like, constant hustle to be able to do that. So, like, I hope that our engagement deepens,
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure. There's a question that I
We have
just
a
saw.
question from Shankar. Uh, Hi, Shankar. Thank you for being here. So he says, sorry to step back to an earlier topic on acting and dancing, actor and dancer. What is your opinion for both of us? Which are the differences between the two, between dancer and actor, acting and dancing? And are there differences at all? Is his question. Hmm.
I don't know. The word that keeps coming to me is that word, that very elusive, almost unachievable kind of word that we keep talking about, embodiment.
Hmm.
To be, to just be,
Hmm.
to move, for something to happen.
Right. Right.
Mm, I don't think so, actually. I don't think so. But again, by saying that, I feel like if I say there's no difference between actors and dancers, I'm trivializing the dancer's very, very difficult journey, as somebody who has used their physical strength, ability, and just sheer power to do what they do. But perhaps our intentions are similar, that we want to, maybe there's also a new kind of actor. I hope there is a new kind of
Oh,
actor.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, would I be, like, am I off to say this?
No,
I don't know.
you're there. Yeah, I think also I'll just, if you don't, hi Shankar.
Hi, Dia.
Hi.
Hi, Deepika. Hi.
Yeah, I think to speak to what this question that you asked, I'll just give a little bit of input from my sense of it. Like what Deepika said about, I think there's a new kind of actor. Maybe I've also noticed, like in the last say 15 years or so, that like so many actors that we work with are really training in movement in a very specific way, um, and vice versa. Like in Bangalore, you'll see that I've seen dancers, for me myself, and most of the dancers I work with, we're constantly milling around theater performances and really picking up from there. The spoken word became very important for us somehow. I myself, when I came out of the company I was in, I I noticed that somehow I'm not able to. Sometimes I need to say it with my words, and sometimes it's a movement thing, and I really don't know why this is this and this is this, but I'm very convinced in that moment. And like this, Deepika used this word embodiment, and what I know, one thing which I can only say I can note, which I notice in really good actors, like actors who, like when I watch it, I'm so convinced, or they've transported me not just into their kirdar, into their character, but into several characters somehow, or possibilities, is that they really know what they're doing with their body. And some people are very they have not had any movement training, but they're very intuitive at it, and it's, I can't say, oh, this person is not dancing. It's like there's I mean, I can see a choreography happening as they say their lines, or as they block, or their whatever. It feels like there is a choreography happening. Yeah, so it's a really interesting question, I think.
Yeah, and in
Something,
fact, I don't know if,
Sorry.
no,
sorry.
sorry, it's something which comes to me always, like, this, like, the approach is very different, but somewhere they come together, yet they stand apart, in terms of their approach, output. So it's always a question. And now that you're a dancer and she's a playwright working with movement, I thought this question is very sort of your
Yes,
opinion.
absolutely.
Yes, and in fact, I think because also I think Dia would also be able to say more about this because she's more familiar with the correct language. But I think if we look back at like in tribes, our roles perhaps would have been different as like as the storyteller and as the person who danced, maybe. But um, but I think everyone moved and everyone told stories, and I think it's this idea of I think it was I feel it's a hugely logistical also difference because of the way that your training takes place. Like, you go to a dance class and you naturally become better over time, but
Yeah.
but actors not necessarily like have that very linear trajectory of understanding how to. I've really like yeah, I really don't know what that's like. Perhaps somebody who's maybe been to theater school would be able to describe that, but I feel there is a new performer somewhere amidst us. We are collectively building one, I think,
Hmm.
uh,
That is
who
so
will not,
exciting what you just said.
yeah, yeah, who will not be one or the other,
Yeah,
perhaps.
yeah.
I don't know.
Actually, there are few workshops I've attended, Shankar, and Deepika. I think I told you about this very excitedly when it happened. You are one of them who came and worked with us in this way. There's another guy called Rob Hayden, who's a dancer, used to be a dancer with Ultima Wears, and for me, it was. I said, okay, this person is doing this, which is that they were teaching voice work, they were teaching body work, they were teaching improvisation, they were working with presence. There was even some form in some of the things, but I never felt like, now I'm doing acting training, now I'm doing physical training, oh, now I'm doing voice, oh, now somehow the whole being was constantly in, you know, in being called up. And sometimes
Yeah,
you focus on the voice, but there's no way you were doing that without knowing what's going on with your body and other bodies. And sometimes more
and actually, Dia is a perfect example of that. Even if you go to her class, if you go to a class, simple, like, no, I don't mean this in a, I'm not doing this because, oh, like we can, but I really feel this. And there's a small tribe of people I engage with in this manner. Like, even her instructions in class about lifting your hand, this idea that you're conductor between earth and sky, I think that's it's so tangible, it's so physical, it's so imaginative. That's the tool that the actor uses, right? Like when, so I feel that performers language, that performers body, that performers internal like existence in relation to the world, there's no, in that sense, I hope there's no difference, but I think we pursue very different paths. And actors can also, they can drink lots and get wasted for many days and then still be actors, but dancers don't necessarily have that that luxury, I guess. But I think that's getting scrambled a bit. Little bit khichdi is happening, I feel.
But Shankar and Deepika both and everyone else, some people have written to this. So for example, Shumit has said, good theatre blocking always involves principles of choreography. Would you agree? Ronita has said, in Indian traditional dance, Bharatanatyam, for example, there is nritta, practice, nritya, dance, and abhinaya, drama, as a system. So it's a classical practice, and it infiltrates into contemporary art practitioners for sure. And she says it's a comment, and it's always been in our roots. But Kuriyam, for example, there's so many traditions that I think find that place. Yeah.
Yeah, and verbal theater being like that idea of like the colonial theater that was brought to us, but actually all our traditional actors are able to stand and sit in that squat for very long, which is which it's a physical marker, but it also tells you what was demanded of the actor's body.
Right.
But it isn't, I guess, wasn't for a while, I think. But now actors are training, like even the city lab that I wanted to go to, one of the ladies, one of the teachers there, Ellen Lauren, who trained us, she's close to 60, and it was a body that had really trained for very, very long. It was a dancer's body, it was an athlete's body, but it was an actor's body.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so we would be very interested
Thank you.
in hearing from everyone. So please write in if you have more to share post this. Deepika and me both kind of agreed in the beginning that let's try to end on time. So so we'll take one more
It's
question.
okay. It's okay. Yeah.
Okay, so Deep, one more question if you can answer, and
Of
then
course. Of course. Yeah.
and if anyone wants to post comments or has urgent burning questions, please go ahead and do that. This
I
question,
think 1 hour is too short. No?
yeah. So this question is, as someone who is very, very interested in creating work, my struggle is one with gaining experience and learning, which will continue with time, but mostly with knowing. What do I really want to say? Creating work around it. This question to me is deep, honestly, is deep. And honestly, I feel like I will spend a big part of my time trying to figure it out. So I am even finding it hard to start. What advice would you have for me?
So difficult, right? Mm, she says that, or she or he says the struggle is with finding what to say. We don't know what to say. Is that one of
Yeah,
the?
but not even knowing where to start. Says that all is interested in is interested in learning, keeps learning, gaining experience. What do I really want to? What do I really want to say? How do I even like start?
Start. Well, actually, the thing is, you don't really have to want to say something to make a performance. Maybe you want to really know a little more about geometry, or maybe you want to understand how a set of four musical chords on the piano or over the guitar interact with four dancers in a space. There are four dancers and four chords, and that's all you have. And maybe you want to know what that is like. So we don't really have anything to say. Maybe you want to make something that's very symmetrical, or asymmetrical. Maybe you want to make something that is very, very harshly, it's played out in a harsh light or in no light. Like maybe you want to make a choreography in the dark. I don't know. I'm just saying this because I think the idea of wanting to say something is that gets said anyhow, because you don't control that. Actually the audience receives it, but perhaps there are other explorations outside of wanting to say something, that could actually be, that could feel a little more accessible, but are equally profound, equally meaningful, equally beautiful, uh, but free you up a little bit so that you are not, you're not like, you don't feel you have to make a social commentary, or you don't feel like you have to put an opinion out there, but rather you're curious about, I don't know, like I said, four chords, four dancers, and they, what is the music that can be made with four chords, one dancer? three chords, two dancers. I don't know, you're just playing with mathematics, I guess. Or you're playing with shapes, lines.
I mean,
But
let's
if
say
you're,
it doesn't have to be like a
you're
big question.
yeah, curiosity can help. And I always feel like we are anyway bound by the way that we are funded, so a lot of our work ends up being minimal simply because we don't want to make really big sets that we can't afford, and be practically we can't travel with. And given the state of the world currently, perhaps it is better to keep material less, and not waste things like physical things. And we want to keep, because and personally I really feel like if there's an interesting presence in space, I can watch this presence, can be witness to this presence, and as an audience. So I don't think we really, so in that sense we can always start small, right? We can always like get two people who are very interested in doing something, start small, shoot a small film on your phone, and build from there. Perhaps try to find money for it or not, like however you choose to do it. But I think to feel like this is simple and that you can do it, it's just to, to, to keep it very very easy and doable for yourself may help. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, and because you referred earlier to sort of when we lived in more kind of in the forest, and when those many years ago when we weren't the urban people that we are, and we lived in smaller communities. I guess at some sense art making is is um is very intrinsic to the human condition in a sense, right? Because we're talking about the witness, um, talking about the prefrontal cortex, and also the witness is the audience. So art making, performance making, and performance watching is it's like a basic human thing in a sense. Storytelling, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah, because we're always watching ourselves as people.
Yeah.
So it's just an exaggeration of that ability to be able to look
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Deepika, so much.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like I'm always so inarticulate when it
Not at
comes to these
all.
things because I haven't prepared like in that way.
But
But I
also
feel happy to.
what questions would come. So yeah, but before going, I just want to ask you one last thing to leave us with, and of course you can say whatever else you feel you'd like to say before we go. But what is giving you light or resilience at this point in history, at this point in your career, at this point as a woman, as an Indian, if you identify with that, and all of those things, and what is making you feel like a little, what is a little bit more sort of giving you not so much hope, or what is, yeah, where does the hope lie, where does the light lie, and where we are, and where does it, do you feel, where are the concerns, where are the fears?
Yeah, there are fears, there are concerns, but I think over the last couple of years, I've been surrounded by a really beautiful tribe of women in the arts, you included. And some of them are here. There's Ron, there's Mai, there's Snigdha. There's like, we may not be talking about this constantly, but I feel these women power me in ways that they either know, they don't know. And hopefully that is something that one does for them as well, directly, indirectly, as a collective. I think this. I'm currently teaching young people, like young adults. So that is very very nice because they have a different moment in time that they're like, we may be living in the same like year and month, February 2021, but they it's different. They have a different view of the world. They have a different idea of theater, and they have a way of being that I'm very fascinated by. So that's really giving me a lot of joy. I'm really trying hard to stay in my physical practice that is keeping me alive and full of breath, uh, because it has been a hard year for everybody. So to find that one reference point that that takes you through is very very useful. I'm not writing anything new yet, which again is something that I'm trying to. It's a battle constantly because I should be writing the next play and
Mm.
sending it to theaters in here and there and in these countries and make like this conversation that I started with so and so must be taken forward with a new piece of work, all that. But I'm not able to currently, and I'm trying to just say, okay, then let's listen to what one wants, and if one wants to train and do that. And so as a woman, I think currently, because I'm really trying very very hard to not. It was a difficult year in many ways, so I'm trying very hard not to think of my work from like generally my work is about women and women's stories, and I'm just trying to think outside of that, actually not think about that at all, if that makes sense. Basically to train and to find oneself, as
Beyond gender also,
as
no?
a, yeah, outside of that just for a bit, because whether we like it or not, like perhaps for me that will always be part of what I'm trying to learn the guitar again, restarting. So I know, and all my training seems to anyway like selfishly finally feed the performative part of what I do, or the theater making part of what I do. So I'm also hoping that I can find things that don't necessarily lend to this world. So let's see. I really I can't. Yeah, I don't know, but I'm trying to do even the smallest things that give 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 pleasure, that nourish, and that allow one to. I really did have a very difficult year. 2020 was hard for many reasons, some of which we all share. Uh, and so to say that, okay, one can't be part of every social cause, and one can't take on things that, like, we really are very, very small in that sense. So you lend your voice and lend your service to the small circle of influence that you can have, and see where that goes.
Right.
So I'm again long answer to a simpler question.
Not at all. Wonderful answer. And for everyone having after questions, after thoughts, write into us. For a few days, I can
Thank
still
you. Yeah.
hassle Deepika and get her to record a video or write us an answer, whatever feels right, and send it, put it up on, all our Insta, Facebook, whatever ways we have to reach you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for calling me and listening to me ramble, because really I feel because I don't know, because we're not in the same room or whatever, I feel like I'm just looking into thin air and pulling out like really not making a lot of, not being very coherent. And I've also claimed that I'm a writer, so this is might be a bit like antithetical to that.
We will all claim that you are a writer. Your writing is like your poems through the pandemic. They really did something for me because, I mean, yeah, you have the gift of articulation in a very specific way, and you know this. And I'll call you and go on about it because everyone's going to be like, okay, what is this?
Admiration.
Admiration, yeah. But and it is very much, and I think it's like you said, it's interesting because the last thing you've ended with is you've talked about this sort of tribe of women empowering you, and then you've also talked about sort of this sort of violent gender identity, which you're like, I'm not necessarily just in this gender identity. Like, I want to just play the guitar. Like, can I just or do yoga or whatever? Yeah, and I think it's sort of somewhere between those binaries that we are trying to make sense of ourselves, our practice. Shankar's question, actor, dancer, like these things of language in a sense, which which we sort of have to define things in a very specific way.
Yeah,
We've
yeah,
evolved more and more to do that because our primary interaction is now through Zoom. You can't see my body, you can't see my gestures really. We can't really speak to each other beyond very little of the face and voice, and mainly the words, or we're writing, or we're uploading. So yeah, so we're in a complex time with very basic sort of communication in a sense. And so it
yeah.
becomes all the more important to hear from you, and it's all the more important for you to have a meandering answer to a small question, because the question wasn't small anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deepika.
Yeah, yes. Thank you,
That's
Dia, and thank
so
you,
much
citizens
power.
of stage. Thank you, Mai, and to you as well. To everyone that was here, that was like kind enough to show up.
Absolutely. And we'll be posting this. So please share it with anyone you feel is asking these questions, having these conversations, and not. So thank you. And we'll keep doing this. And hopefully we'll all connect in, yeah, real ways, even through Zoom. Thank you, everyone.